Have you ever wondered what it's like to own your own business? Be your own boss? Welcome to Season 7 of Business Mentorship, Keepin It Real, where we meet with corporate leaders who have taken the leap to business owner and join us as part of the shareyourstoriesonline series. Hello, I'm Trish Tonak, and today we're going to meet a small business owner, celebrate their great idea, and introduce you to the person behind the logo. We invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to the show. Our guest joins us from Windsor, Canada. Shirley Gaudon is an author, speaker, consultant, and certified trauma-informed life coach with the trademarked program, Trauma Smart Leadership. Her mission is to teach others how to lead with compassion, empathy, and understanding. Shirley's going to share her story on entrepreneurship and give us a look behind the scenes into finding authentic leadership and living life bravely and boldly. I'd like to welcome and introduce everyone to Shirley.
Thank you for having me, Trish.
It's so wonderful to get together because, these wonderful platforms give us an opportunity to meet folks from all over the world. And I know that you're actually not far from me, being west of Toronto. But one of the things that you talk about in your website is about training today's leaders on how to be the exceptional leaders of tomorrow. How do you do that, Shirley? I mean, there's so much noise out there. And we have so many programs and educational opportunities. How do you give people the skills they need to be exceptional?
Well, I started it by, creating a program called Trauma Smart, as you introduced. And here's the thing, we all have trauma. We all come from trauma. And I guess when I started my healing process several years back, more than 10 years ago, I recognized that, there was trauma, generational trauma. And when I started to look at, where I was in my life and moving forward and how I wanted to change everything, I realized that, we carry that trauma with us if we don't heal it.
Right.
And, in the workplace, let's face it, if we, have, say you have a conversation, or you have some sort of a conflict with, a family member or something, you go to work, guess what's on your mind all day? Is that episode that happened in the morning. It's like it spins, it's the noise in your head. And unfortunately, leaders may see that as, oh, she's disengaged today, or she's being too aggressive. And they kind of like look at you as to say, well, really, what's wrong with her? Instead of getting curious and saying to themselves, she's obviously having a difficult time this morning. How can I help her? How can I help get her motivated to move on without having to know what's really, they don't need to know the details of why I'm upset, but just to kind of let me know that I'm supported and that they see me.
Now, I noticed that your programs are going to be available in post-secondary education facilities as part of the curriculum.
I did do that with McMaster University. I have another program that is specifically geared to women. I call it Power Within and Rooted to Rise. It's really in the rebranding stage right now. It will be available on my website, hopefully by the end of this month. So I really did a summary of that. I did a 3-week summary and presented it at McMaster. And it was quite successful, and I'm very happy about it. And I've been doing that sort of thing with, nonprofit, mostly women organizations. It's a 12-week program, or there's 12 modules. And the way I'm setting it up now is that women can access it when they want, when they have the time. So they could do more than one module in a week. It's not time. And then what I also give them is a live group coaching session. So we all get to share what we've learned, what we've uncovered, because none of us know everything.
Yeah, for sure.
And we all bring different experiences, and we also bring different tools as to how we've coped.
Right. Now, let's talk a little bit about the marketing of a rebrand because, one of the things that we do is we share the behind the scenes because, the front facing, everything looks perfect, right? It's the white picket fence. Everything's
Right.
branded. Everything looks wonderful. And everything is perfect. But you and I both know that there's a lot that happens behind the scenes, right?
Absolutely.
So, for our viewing and listening audience who may be thinking of a rebrand, first of all, what was the tipping point that you decided that a rebrand was necessary? Was it the accessibility of the program to a larger global audience, or was it that the name and positioning of the actual program you wanted to give an update to?
Both things, to be honest with you. I wanted to update I did want to update the name of the product and the program. And I also was using an application, and I had done some, presented some beta testing with groups of women, and found that the program I had been using was not user friendly for them. And so it really complicated it for them. And I think that created issues for them, with staying in touch with it, like getting motivated to carry through. Some of them would drop off, like they get few modules in and go, oh, this is too much work, or either they were ready to do the work or the program was too cumbersome for them. And as it turns out, I do have one of those ladies that has taken the course with me, has changed her life tremendously, and she's now working with me to help me put this together in like creating the brand that I'm creating now. So it's interesting how, doing this kind of work, you meet people along the way that, have have faith in what you're doing and believe in what you're doing and really want to help you get that out there again.
That's a really great point because the focus groups or beta testing that you did is really one great way of connecting with your target market and getting their honest feedback, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Now, did you use that similar sort of program or thought process when you were going through the trademarking process? Because that's another long-term commitment to getting trademark. That registration is not for the faint of heart either, right?
No, it's not. It takes months.
It does, yeah. And again, to the white picket fence thing, right? I mean, we put these awesome programs up on our website. We strive for perfection, or at least to make them as best as we can at the time. And folks don't really have an understanding as to what happens behind the scenes. Is there a tip that you could provide to our viewing and listening audience who may be thinking, you know what, I have a similar program or a program that I would like to trademark? Is there one thing that you can share with them before they start the process that would be helpful as they begin to think about moving forward with registration?
I think you have to really believe in what you're doing,
Right.
what you've created. And you really have to recognize that it's something that's needed in the community, uh, and that it's going to be accepted. Um, yeah, I mean, it's still, there's going to be people that are really interested in it and want to do the programs and take part in it. And there are others that are always going to be skeptical. So it's like anything, when you're trying to introduce something, there's going to be no's and there's going to be yeses. And
Yeah,
you
for
have
sure.
to keep being persistent, right?
Yeah.
And consistent with what you're doing.
I think that those two words, persistent and consistent, are really important for small business owners because to your point, we do get a lot of no's. I mean, there's a lot of no's before you get a yes.
Yes.
And correct.
Yes.
And I think that you have to be resilient enough to accept the no's in the spirit in which it's intended, right? It may not
Yes.
be the right time. It may not be, they may not be in the availability may be an issue. It might just be not right now rather than a hard no. But I also think we have to accept the hard no's and move on to another way of reaching our target market so that we do attract the people who are ready and interested in our programs.
Interesting you say that, because I also created another program that is called Resilience Reinforces Thriving. So if you're resilient and you keep going and you learn from your lessons, you learn from your mistakes, you learn from, the things that show up in your life, then they take you to thriving if you consistently, stay with it.
Yeah, stay the course, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's real easy to say, I want to just, cover my head and not look at anybody and curl up and just kind of feel sorry for myself when I have a no. But really, that's not going to take you anywhere. So you have to really, persevere.
So, what was the tipping point for you into entrepreneurship? Because, 97% of the business features that we share are from corporate leaders who have transitioned to business owner, right? We go into corporate, we get the skills and experience that we need. We decide at some point in time that it's no longer serving us. And so we decide to move into entrepreneurship. What was the tipping point for you? What do you remember the day that you were sort of sitting at your desk and thought, okay, now's the time to make the change?
Yes. I'm well into my 60s. And I'm one of these people that I don't really want to retire. Like retirement to me makes me think about, when my dad retired early and really had nothing in his life other than, walking and watching television. And for me, I'm like, no, that's not where I want to be. I'm active, I'm interested, I'm curious, and I want it to kind of like, what do I want to do with myself once I'm done with where I'm at, right? And so I want to continue to move on and make a difference for others. I want to see people grow and figure out, what it is they want out of their life. You're never too old to make a change, right? So
Sure.
for me, I've always kind of been that sort of person. I hit I may hit a disastrous moment in my life, but I always pick myself up and move on. It's like, okay, this has happened to me now. How do I change my direction and what do I do for myself to keep me motivated and healthy?
That's a really good point because we all have experiences that we actually need to share in order to help other people grow.
Right,
I'm sure that if you and I had a conversation and talked about our past experience, we would learn from each other because it becomes win-win, right?
right.
And some people call that mentorship, other people call it role modeling, some people call it storytelling. But have you ever had someone in your career that you can think of that really pushed the envelope for you and gave you the confidence and the courage to pursue a new chapter in your life?
I would probably say it was my parents that motivated me. I come from a small city from the far east coast of Canada, and I decided at 17 that I wanted something different in my life, and I moved to Toronto on my own. And I've never looked back. And so I've always been, I guess, creating new experiences for myself. And I think another major point for me to make a change was when I discovered I had cancer, breast cancer, in that would have been 2000, and I wasn't in a happy place, and I it was kind of like my wake-up call at that time. So it was like, okay, where I'm at right now hasn't been working for the last 20 years. It's time for me to make a change. And I did make that change. It took a few years to get there, because nothing, there's things you have to work out and plan. And I managed to move forward, and yeah, so like I say, and then I wrote a book, or co-authored a book with a group of other women that had experienced cancer, and we all shared the experiences based on what we learned about ourselves and how cancer wasn't a disaster, it was really a gift.
And that's Heroes, right? Your book was called
Yes,
Heroes.
yes, yes, cancer heroes.
And I really appreciate the fact that you're taking your real life experience and sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly, as they would say, because life is never perfect. There are always bumps in the road. But to your point, we all need to be able to say, okay, this happened now, but it doesn't have to define me for the future.
That's right.
Right?
As our past isn't our past may have projected us to where we are, and there are some elements of who we really are still there, but that doesn't have to define who I am going forward.
Right.
And we're all capable of making choices and decisions that take us in a new direction.
And I think that's really your point about compassion, empathy, and understanding, right? We have
Yes,
to kind of maybe take a pause and put ourselves in someone else's shoes for a second or two and think just for a second before we respond, right?
absolutely.
Because having that empathy and compassion for other humans, I think is probably more evident now than it ever was before. And those are tools that serve us well, no matter what stage we are in life.
That's right. So really, when especially, go back to the workplace, you see someone having a difficult time, usually a leader will go, "Oh my goodness, I have a, what do we call them, a problem child." Right? I've heard that phrase, and actually, I think I've used it in my past life as well. But really, what you're seeing is not a bad person. You're seeing a trauma response.
Right.
And
Right.
there's a big difference. And so when you respond to that response in a very compassionate, loving, and understanding way, you're giving them safe space.
Are these skills that we can learn or are they inherent within us? I mean, we all know, talk about emotional intelligence, and there's various different components to that. And there's a lot of people that feel that those skills can be learned. We can take our gifts and hone them to meet the place in which we live, work, and play. So, would you be one of those folks that say that you can learn to be compassionate and empathetic?
Absolutely, you can. Think about it this way. Um, when you're in a space where you're doing your own healing, you get to a place in your life where, you've learned different values, you've learned behaviors, all of these things to be, and have most of the time you're in survival mode. When you start the healing process, you end up having to change behaviors. So when I started my healing journey in my 50s, I had to change behaviors of how I reacted and responded to different things that triggered me. Right. And so you can learn to be a different person. It's just reframing, rewiring your mind. It's mindset.
So, are these the things that you share in your speaking engagements? Because, I mean, as a speaker, you have a succinct amount of time to get the message across to the audience. So, what would you say is the topic that folks most engage you for as a speaker?
I think it's about being relatable. It's being relatable. So when you share your own personal story, I think what allows people to see is, oh my goodness, I'm not the only one.
Right.
Right? I'm not the only one who's gone through this. This has been my life, and yes, and look at who she is now or who he is. You know what I mean? They've made changes. So there's possibilities,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I think it's the storytelling. It's about sharing your actual, people can relate to that.
For sure. It gives them a sense of camaraderie almost, right? When
I
you
belong.
hear,
I
yeah,
belong.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Now,
Mhm.
one of the things that we do in our guest blog is we talk about words of advice. So, as we wrap up our conversation today, why don't you share with our viewing and listening audience why you have a wonderful phrase, and it is be bold, be brave, and move beyond. How is that important to you in the work that you're doing?
Everything that I've done in my life comes from having to be bold. So I had to have the courage to leave a province at 17 to come to another province and start anew. Um, and being brave, it took courage. It took real courage for me to do that. And I had to dig deep for that. Yes, I was afraid. There were many fearful moments, but I allowed myself to feel it and just get through it. And to move beyond, we limit ourselves. We tend to limit ourselves as human beings because really we co-create our own lives. I'm the creator of who I want to be and where I want to be in my life. And we all have that capability. So I just want to give that to people. It's like you have the opportunity to be bold, brave, and move beyond. You control it, nobody else. And I give them tools to see that.
You know, Shirley, that's a really wonderful way for us to wrap up our conversation today because that's really powerful messaging for anyone who's facing a challenge, or if there's a challenge on the horizon, or even if they're just deciding that they want to do things a little bit differently. I think that's very encouraging words of wisdom to share with people that we actually are the creator of our own destiny. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Trish. It's been a pleasure.
I love your connection between giving us insight into how you build real life and opportunity. And I really think that's a wonderful gift. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
To our viewing and listening audience, I'd like to thank you for tuning in for this edition of Keepin' It Real. And I'd like to send my personal thanks to all of our sponsors and mentors for their ongoing support, and ask that you share and invite your friends and colleagues to subscribe to our show, Business Mentorship Keepin' It Real, found on YouTube and your favorite podcast channel. Shirley and I would like to thank you for joining us, and we look forward to meeting you next time when we meet another business owner and celebrate their great idea.